This is Dr. Jose Saldivar with another episode of the Way to College podcast. And one of the joys of the podcast, it's allowed me to reconnect with folks that I've met along my own journey, both educational and professional. And before I introduce my guest, I have this story that I'm going to tell. And so I hadn't been out of college very long, maybe 2 or 3 years. I was asked to serve on, if I wanted to serve on local Boys and Girls Club board. And not long after joining, we had to close our doors. And then I was offered an opportunity to serve on a larger neighborhood board that would then offer services in our community. And I remember that first meeting that I had with some of their board members. And, they asked me if I was ready to commit 900 hours of service, and they gave me a sheet and it had like all of the activities. And I'm all of, 24, 25. And needless to say, I was incredibly overwhelmed. But the wonderful thing about that experience was, and being on the board, was having tremendous leadership. And so my guest today played such a pivotal role in my experience there, and such a positive role. So Sabrina, would you mind introducing yourself to my listeners out there? Yeah.
Thank you for that. I wasn't sure where it was going. Wasn't sure. But my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez, and I currently am the president and CEO of a consulting company for nonprofits called Supporting World Hope.
Sabrina, thank you.
Thank
you for joining me. Sabrina, I start all of my conversations now with this question. The question is, if you had to go back and say, my educational journey really started here at this moment in my life, what would that moment be for you?
I would say my educational journey started, believe it or not, in childhood. Because of what I do, I didn't know it at the time, but my mom is an associate pastor now in a church, and she was a missionary in a church. And we did a lot of community activities because, when you're involved in the church and you want to go on a field trip, or the choir needs new robes or whatever, you do a fundraiser. That's what you do. And so my education journey into what I like to do, or what skill sets I use today, started back then. I don't think I put it together at the time, but that's when it started.
So that's fascinating. I love that. I love that. Right. And yeah, I can see, knowing what I know about you and the work that you've done. Yeah, I definitely see the connection. When do you think, well, because I don't want to bring us too far forward. So let me ask you then, for you as a young child growing up, you're having these experiences, right? And we always get asked when we're a kid, what do you want to be when you grew up? What did you want to be?
I wanted to be an attorney because that's what my mom told me I wanted to be. Not because I wanted to be an attorney. Who knows what they want to be when they're growing up, right? She just said, you like to argue a lot. You're going to be a good attorney. And I took that as, I'm going to be an attorney, all the way up until I made a different decision in my adulthood, which was so disappointing to them because a little bit about my family. I was the first one in my family, as far as my immediate family, to graduate from high school and then to go on to college. So my mom, she was almost there. She dropped out in like the 10th grade. And really it was a poverty situation and a lack of confidence situation. She got picked on a lot, dirty clothes, dirty clothes, not up to fashion, all that stuff. So she chose to leave. And my dad, he rural Virginia, 6th grade, he left school. Nobody came to get him to go back. So that was it for him. And so I was the first one to graduate, but my mom said, you were going to be an attorney. And I said, okay. And then when I called her and said, I'm not going to be an attorney, there's a long story there too. But what I'm going to do is get a graduate degree. I'm going to get a master's. They had no idea what a master's is. You know, think about people in that situation. They know what an attorney is and they know what a doctor is. But they don't have any idea what is a graduate degree. What does that mean? So they were so devastated and disappointed in that process.
I love your story because, one of the reasons I started the podcast, because I think a lot of the young people that I work with have kind of a very narrow view of I can do like these 5 jobs. Mm-hmm. And that's what I know. Right. But if you talk to enough people, you find that, wow, there are a lot of different jobs or a lot of different paths. I can go and get a master's degree or some other graduate degree. And so I appreciate, that your story there. So, but even before deciding, like, I'm going to get a graduate degree. So even while you're in college, your mind was still, I'm going to be an attorney.
My mind was still going to be, I'm going to be an attorney. I did poli-sci. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't even know how honest you want me to be, but I will be honest. I did poli-sci because I thought I was going to be an attorney. That was it. I didn't question it. This is what I want to do. I started my family early. I didn't know how I was going to pay. I guess go all the way back. I didn't know how I was going to pay for college. One, mm-hmm. My parents, bless their heart. Again, the background, but my mom was like, you can go, but we don't know how you're going to pay for it. You're going to have to join Uncle Sam's army or do something. And so I was just smart enough to be in the AP classes, but not smart enough to get those good scholarships. I was kind of like that middle rung. So I didn't have a lot of scholarship opportunities. So I joined Uncle Sam's army, all with the goal of they're going to pay for me to go to college and I'm going to be an attorney. That's it. So when I got to college, I was 20, probably you said 24, 20. I was probably 23 when I started college because I did the army. I got married, had kids. I did all of that first. I did it backwards, guys. Whoever's listening, I did it backwards. Just know that. Started college, felt like I was behind. So I did finish my undergraduate in 3 years because I felt like I'm so behind. I got to fast pace this thing to keep up. But I majored in poli-sci because that was the closest thing to pre-law that there was. And I had an opportunity to do an internship with Advocacy Resource Center for Housing, which is ARCH, which is a local nonprofit community here in the Valley. And the reason why I did that internship, I'm going to plug this too. In the political science department at the time, you could do an internship and get class credit for it. And so I thought this will be a good thing. Not only will I get the class credit for it, but I will learn how to mediate because the whole thing was mediating between landlords and attorneys. I mean, landlords and tenants who were being evicted, and I'll get to work with attorneys. It was the good and bad is I got to work with attorneys and I decided, I don't want to be an attorney. And not because attorneys are bad. It's just that the way that I perceived it, a way I discovered is there's no right, there is no wrong, there's only the law. Mm-hmm. And that's what law school teaches you. But it's not a part of my personality in that way. It's right and wrong. And so I didn't want that. That was just it. So that's what kind of changed what I wanted to do. And then that's when I fell in love with the nonprofit side of the house.
So, I mean, a couple of things, right? I appreciate you saying, like, talking about your journey and your particular pathway, right? And I would just say that's okay, right? Because part of our conversation is that all of our journeys are so different and all of our paths are so different. So I appreciate you sharing that. I also appreciate, a lot of the young people I work with, I think there's this expectation, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to graduate, I'm going to have a job will be waiting for me. But I think you alluded to something really important. You talked about how critical your experience in that internship was in kind of one, opening your eyes to what the work was like that attorneys were doing, but also the work that you would like to be doing. And so I always encourage young people, if you can do an internship, if you can get some kind of experience, really to open your eyes and give you some experience that maybe you might not, you're certainly not going to get necessarily in the classroom. So I appreciate that. So, you said, you recognized that you wanted to get a graduate degree, told your parents you're not going to go to law school.
I'm not going to go to law school.
So when you go and get your graduate degree, were you still thinking nonprofit? Do you want to do service?
I did. I was thinking nonprofit. I wanted to do service. I wanted to give back to the community. Nonprofit in the sense of, a social enterprise, solving that type of problem. A lot of the people, I got my master's in public administration. A lot of my classmates now are city managers. They're working in that capacity. I never saw that role for me. It's not something that I wanted to do. But what really got my heart pumping and took me back to my roots, which is where I started off at, fundraising in the church and doing that and building those types of relationship, was working in that nonprofit world.
Were there a lot of opportunities for you after graduate school to work in nonprofit?
There was, well, this is what I did. This is the path that I took. And I don't know if, God in his mercy and all those things. So, I worked for the county, which public administration, government, I worked for the county. I did the Hidalgo County Urban County program. I was a program coordinator who was in charge of not only working with subrecipients, which were their government, cities and things like that. But what my boss discovered about me, it was Alan Kamasaki. I like to speak names. He's passed away since, but he had a huge impact on me. What Alan discovered about me was that I really like working with nonprofit subrecipients. And so before that, each coordinator got a city and then they got assigned certain nonprofits. But he saw the passion that I had for it. And so he just gave me all the nonprofits for the county, which is my happy land. Most people would get overwhelmed by that, but I was thrilled by that. So I got to work with all the nonprofits in the county who were receiving urban county funds. And I got to see their back office functions. And so in seeing their back office functions, I got to see their budget. I got to see, were they filing their 990s? Were they filing their audit? Did they have financial controls in place? All of those things like that. And so as a result of that, I knew which organization was on top of their game, right? And as soon as that particular organization had a position open, I applied for that position. Now, I'm not saying I got that position because I applied for the position, because I'm going to be very honest with your listeners. It was all about, again, relationships. The person that I went to college with, who was in my graduate, was the city manager at in the city where I was applying for this position. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm applying for this position with this organization that you fund. Do you have any connections, any feedback? How do I prepare for this? And that's how that ball got rolling there. I think that if I had to say anything to your students that are listening, you don't have to know what you want to be, but you need to network with as many people as possible, because that's going to open up different opportunities that, like you said, you're not aware of. We're sometimes in our lives, and in my life in particular, we're sheltered by our circumstances. So we don't even know all the opportunities that are available to us. But as you network and you grow your circle of influence, you also grow your circle of opportunities. And so be able to explore some of those opportunities. You don't have to know what you want to do right now, but network with different people, explore your opportunities, grow your opportunities, and you will be able to pick and choose where you want to place your talents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I couldn't, yeah, and I appreciate you being honest, because, I with my listeners, I try to do the same thing. And I think my guests, thankfully, they're, all honest, because I think a lot of times, right, nobody tells us about the little nuances. Nobody tells us about how important it is to, you know, if you're building relationships, take care of those relationships. Don't go burning any of your bridges, right? You never know when you might need to go back for,
And if you
recommendation.
do, give yourself permission to forgive yourself and learn from that, because I have burned some.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And you're right. It's because of our circumstances, right? We don't know what we don't know. And
Right.
so I appreciate you talking about, for you, the process of connecting with somebody that you were doing your program with, and and going that route, and at least telling them, hey, I'm applying for this position, any tips, things like that. I love that. So how long did you do this work, and was the work what you were looking for?
Yes. So I've been in the nonprofit industry for over 25 years. I was in my organization for 20 years and retired. I enjoyed the work because it was different every day. So it allowed me to expand my talents and not get bored. There's that, you have to know that about yourself too. Like, some people may like routine, and they want to be an engineer, and that's what they do. And that, and then there's some people who like a different challenge every day. And I can tell you, if you like a different challenge every day, the nonprofit sector might just be for you. Because some days, it's and not only that, some days you're working with a staff who's crying, and that's working on your conflict resolution, and other days you're working with board members and fundraising. Some days you're cleaning toilets, some days you're sitting there preparing a news release and sending that out to the media. So you get a whole breadth of experience through that opportunity. What I did discover in that process is, and I didn't know this about myself until I got into the job, and then when I'm retiring, I like marketing. Had I known marketing as an opportunity, I might have majored in marketing. Still ending up in the nonprofit world, because I do love that industry. Still ending up in that industry, but I think I would have liked marketing as well.
I love that, because I think I don't know. I think as I've gotten older and the more work that I've done, and kind of, I never imagined. I always tell my students, we'll do, in one of the classes that I teach, we'll do like personality tests.
Mm-hmm.
And I always score, I'm a slight introvert. And that always freaks my students out, because they're like, no, you're loud, you get in front of the class. And I think, I see it. I don't think I ever could have seen myself as doing like a podcast, but I've learned that I really like this kind of work. And so I love that, as we get older, right? That's the other thing. It never feels, it always feels like our journeys are a work in progress.
Yes.
And we're always learning something new about ourselves, or getting excited about something new that we've learned about ourselves. So I appreciate you talking about that marketing aspect. You do this work with this organization in particular for 20 years.
Yes.
How did you know it was time for you to step away?
I knew it was time for me to step away. Look, you have to love what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I knew, and I still loved what I did. But there comes a time when it becomes routine, and people would think, well, that's what you want. You want it to be routine. That's not what necessarily drives me.
Yeah.
So to your own self, be true, right? Could I've stayed and done a routine and everybody thought I was great, and why not? I could have, but I thought, to take this organization perhaps to the next level, It needs to be someone with a little bit more, I wouldn't say passion, because I was passionate about the mission and organization, but willing to take a bigger risk than what I was willing to take. And when you start looking at things like that, I think it's then time for you to say, okay, I think it's time for me to go, because someone else needs to come in and do this piece of it.
I appreciate that. I think that question was a little more for me.
Okay.
Over the last, well, over the last couple of interviews, I've shared with my guests that I find myself kind of, so this is my 20th year in higher ed, and I have a part-time administrative role, and I'm stepping down at the end of later this year. But I find myself, as I step down, I've reached my ceiling, and it is routine, and I know exactly. Yeah, and for me, I'm looking for, where can I grow? Where can I do things that are going to continue to fulfill me and feed me, right, and get me excited about stuff? And so, I
get me right beyond the comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's where change happens, and that's where transformation happens. I need to be slightly outside of my comfort zone, and I was in my comfort zone, and it didn't feel. You're supposed to feel good because you're in your comfort zone, but it's not, because that's not what gives me energy and drive. And so
so let me ask you then, you do this work, you're with this organization 20 years, you're in this comfort zone, right? Recognizing, maybe it is time for me to step away. And then what was next for you? Because I think, some people, they do the same thing for the rest of their lives. Some people, find themselves in that comfort zone, but are afraid to step away, afraid to change it. You're young. So, deciding youngish. Young, I'm going to say young, you're young. Okay. And you've still got a lot of living to do.
Yes.
And looking for, obviously, those challenges, those spaces that are going to get you out of your comfort zone a little bit. Yes. So what was next for you?
So for me, what was next was starting my own company. I wanted to do it. A lot of people don't realize this about me. I am a risk taker, but I'm an incremental risk taker. So I needed to have that comfort of having a retirement before I branched out onto my own. So that was my comfort. I even if this is failed, I still got my retirement check, kind of thing. But the next thing for me was starting my own company. And the reason why I wanted to start my own company was to support nonprofit professionals who are stressed out, overworked, and overwhelmed. I had 20 years of knowledge in my head. I wanted to support them. It doesn't come without a cost. It did not come without a cost to me to get into my comfort zone and have it to become routine. It cost me. You mentioned getting a sheet that says 900 hours. Well, I was working thousands of hours in addition to that, and that affected my health, right? And so I didn't want others to have to suffer through that. So I thought, I'm going to start this company, and I'm going to, my model is based on having low cost and no cost service for nonprofit professionals, and putting that information out there and coaching them, executive coaching, working with boards of directors, facilitating leadership retreats, and all of those things. And it's been fun, because when you do start your own company and you get to determine what your hustle is going to be. Am I going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and go to sleep at midnight? Am I going to, take a meeting before? You get to set your own schedule. You get to determine your own clients. I don't know how a better way to say this. And I enjoy that piece and focus on what I want to focus on. So I enjoy that piece. And it's been challenging. Like today, I think I'll share this, a learning experience today. I wanted to write a book. And so I reached out to someone who was going to be a ghostwriter for me, that was going to put all my blog content together and my videos, and they were going to form a book for me. Well, I had some other personal, and it was going to cost $25,000. I was willing to make that investment because I didn't want to write it. I wanted someone else to do it for me. I signed the contract, was ready to go, and gave a deposit, and something came up, family situation came up. And I had to email them and say, I can't do this. I had signed the contract. The contract says if you cancel, it's $3,000. It hurts my soul that it's $3,000. But what I admire about the person on the other end is that they stood their ground, right? That's my $3,000 mistake at the end of the day. So I'm still learning how to navigate this entrepreneurial process, which is something I wanted. I wanted to continually be challenged and to be out of my comfort zone. So I'm getting what I asked for. Be careful what you ask for, right?
Absolutely. But it also, I mean, this is, like you said, this is what you've asked for. This is what you were looking for, right? Something a little different. Let me ask you, because I know I'm experiencing this, and talking to other folks, they experience this too. When you've been doing something for so long and you decide, I think it's time for me to pivot, go in a different direction, right? Pursue something else. It's hard not to develop an identity with those 20 plus years of work that you've done. How have you managed your 30 years? How have you managed that? Was that tough for you?
Look, I'm not a perfect person, Jay. So I'm going to say this. Although I started my own company, technically retired, I have created that nonprofit environment for myself. So I serve on several boards of directors. So I still am in I feel like I'm still using that skill set, relationships, and all those things that I developed in the nonprofit world. But, the skill set that I have, and someone shared with me, your superpower is building relationships. Well, building relationships really translates across nonprofit, small business. It's just a good skill set, or a good superpower to have. So I have managed to create an environment where I still get to tap into that skill set. So did I totally disconnect? No.
Yeah.
But I get to do it on my own terms. That is different. It's very different from being the CEO of an organization and completely responsible for whether someone gets their paycheck or not get their paycheck. That's not the position I'm in anymore. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. So, you've entered this entrepreneurial world. You're still navigating, still learning. What advice would you give somebody who is looking to, regardless of whether or not they've got the experience sort of that you've had, right, 25, 30 years in a particular industry, but anybody that's wanting to jump into and become an entrepreneur, what advice would you give them?
The advice that I would give them is the advice that was given to me and what I took. I actually, when I first started this journey, I did hire a coach. I did not know the entrepreneurial world. Mm-hmm. And I paid and paid a part of a program, a pretty steep price. It was like $18,000. But it was an investment in me. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I needed to do because I was not familiar with this world. And I needed to, again, if I'm going to provide a service, I want to provide it quality. And I wanted to have clarity around what it was I was offering people. And not only have clarity around what I was offering people, but also how to establish myself as an expert in that online community. So yes, if people locally know of my expertise in the nonprofit area, but no outside of this community, I'm not a household name per se. And And so I really needed help in identifying how to establish expertise, in this online world. Because I started my business right 3 years ago. And so right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I was like, okay, this is different. I can't do in-person trainings,
Yeah.
right? I can't do, go knock on the door of the nonprofit in my community because no one is meeting.
Yeah.
And so I had to figure out, if I want to do this, I had to figure out how to do it, how to establish my expertise on using social media, using the internet. It's pretty much running, it's like running an online business. And so it was unfamiliar territory for me. And so I had to hire a coach to help me navigate it. And it was worth the investment.
Yeah. Yeah. I with my own work, I had to hire a consultant to help with that. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I love, I think this kind of information, right? It translates regardless of the industry that you're going into, but seeking out help.
Yes.
Right. Getting help, recognizing that I need help, and I'm going to find somebody who knows how to do this, who has experience doing this. And I'm going to pick their brain. I'm going to sign up, to be a part of this program, but utilizing resources.
Yes.
And I feel like, I don't know, whenever I work with young people and I tell them, hey, you've got these great resources, why don't you use them? And they don't use them. I feel like I don't know what it is. Like, they don't believe that, that they need these resources. I don't know if it's this sort of idea that they need to do it by themselves, or, because they're so reluctant to tap into resources. Did you ever struggle with that when you were young?
I'm trying to think as though I've never really struggled into tapping into resources. Probably what I've struggled with, and what most people struggle with, is, that lack of confidence. And so for example, if you say, oh, you should join A, B, and C, they have a lot of resources. Well, what if I'm not confident enough to go and join A, B, and C? Oh, I got to interact with people. Oh, I got to go in a room and network. Oh, I got to do that. That holds people back a lot. And I think that at some point in my life, that may have held me back until I got to the point where I felt confident. And it's just a mind shift change. You just have to set aside those anxieties that we all have. And just, this is what I say, and I think I got this from Oprah: God does not put you in a place where you are not intended to be. So if that opportunity is there and presenting itself, that's where you are supposed to be. Take advantage of that opportunity. A lot of times, being a woman or being a minority, or, you think, I don't belong in this room. I don't want to tap into this resource because now I got to go and deal with these people, or I got to do this and I got to do that. And we limit our own selves. But that's self-doubt that's creeping in. And I always say, again, you deserve to be there, and take advantage of the resources, take advantage of the opportunities, and just go for it. But it's an ongoing process. It is never a completed process. Even for me in this day and age, it's like, this mixer is coming up, or this is happening, and you're like, man, I could be at home right now, but you never know. But you never know who's going to be in the room. And you should be there and get involved. So it's a continual struggle. That's that little introvert coming out that I have too, and people don't realize that I can be an introvert at times. Yeah.
I love that. I love that it's an ongoing process, right? So no matter how confident, and I share this with my students, no matter how confident I am or I seem, I still have those moments where I walk into a room that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'm like, And I don't feel comfortable. It
Comfortable.
takes me a while to, yeah. So to hear you say that, because you're incredibly accomplished, right? The work that you've done, particularly in the nonprofit sector, right? You probably, done and seen it all. And
Yeah.
so now that you're serving on these boards, now that you've got your own company, to know that you still have those moments,
Still have those moments.
I find it reassuring, right? But that you recognize, right? You still have to remind yourself, right? You
Yes.
deserve to be in that space.
Yep.
So many different ways to go with this work. You've got your business.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you want to do? Anything else that you think, are there any other challenges for you or things you'd like to do?
Well, I'll say there are challenges, not on the business end, but on the personal end. I think that and if you follow me on social media, I'm always like living my best life. I never took the time to live my best life. I never took the time to travel or do those types of experiences. And so that is actually a goal of mine. There is a thing of self-care and mental health. And that is a goal, is to, take care of my mental health and to really make myself a priority around, self-care. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what you do for a living, if you're passionate about something, you can give your all to it and you can forget about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not going to help you in your health. And so that's been one of my goals. So that's kind of what's next for me. When I first started my company, my husband's like, "What are you doing up there? You're always on that computer." And I would say, "I'm building an empire." I'm not building an empire. I've decided, and it's okay that I've decided this. I've decided I don't want to build an empire. And when I was saying I'm building an empire, at first I thought my goal was to build a multi employee firm that was taking on multiple clients and, traveling all. I am okay with being where I'm at, a solopreneur, taking on the clients that I want to take on, impacting the world in the way that I want to impact the world. That is very different from the type A personality that I have of, if you're going to do it big. So I'm changing, I'm evolving.
What led to that change?
What led to that change is health. Health issues led to that change. I'm all, as we sit here and discuss, I am all about self-improvement. When I first started my company, I was creating that same pressure cooker of an environment that I created when I was in, running the nonprofit as a CEO, getting up in the morning, working 12 hours, doing this, and not going to sleep late. And I had to talk to someone and I had to stop myself. Why am I creating this environment for myself? It is not needed. I am the boss. I can set my hours the way I want to set my hours, but I had to literally hire. I know I'm saying hiring a lot, and these young people like, I ain't got no money for that, but there's free resources out there. I literally had to hire someone to talk to say, okay, what is this really about? Why are you creating this same pressure cooker of an environment in your solopreneurial business that you had that got you sick in the first place over here? Yeah. When it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So I had to change the way I operated.
I love that. And I love that, you have, both of us, right? We have the benefit of time on our side, in the sense that, and time and experience.
Yes.
Where we've been doing the work that we do for a considerable amount of time. We can reflect and think about man, if I would have done it differently, if I would have paid attention to my health a little more, prioritized my health. I know there are things that I definitely would have prioritized. And as I look forward, I think about what are my priorities going to be, and still doing the work that I want to be doing, right? The hours that I want to be doing. And so I appreciate that, because I think, and you know, when you're 18, 19, you just, so much of our focus is on that job and on that
Yes.
paycheck and on that house we want to build. And, you know, that
It's the
bar
grind.
that grind.
That grind.
And so, you know, all of a sudden our health becomes secondary, right? It
Mhm.
becomes something that we don't think about till maybe we get sick or a
Yeah.
family member gets sick. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate you reflecting on that and sharing
But
that.
your health, I will say this, your health is your currency. If you don't have health, you don't have anything, period. If
Yeah.
you can't take care of yourself, or you can't get up out of the bed, if you're sick, you don't have anything, because your health is your currency. I mean, and that's, you know, the 18-year-old is not hearing us right now. They're not.
No,
and
I
it's
know.
okay.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay. We all go through our own journey.
Yeah.
And that is okay. But remember that your health is your currency.
I love that. Yeah, they're not listening.
They're not listening. It's okay. They're gonna be young forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We all go through that. Yeah.
Yes.
Sabrina, I know you've got a packed schedule. So I want to be mindful of your time. Before we go, what piece of advice would you give young people who are about to start maybe their professional lives? What advice would you give them?
I would tell them to go in service in your professional life. I think that is very key, to go in service. So when I say that, you know, you get your college degree, a lot of people get their college degree and they graduate, they think, I need to come through the door with this title, making this much money, and this is what I want to do. Sometimes go in humble, go in service, and it will open the door for different opportunities. So if you just think about, I always equate it to, if you're religious or not religious or know the Bible, always equate it to the story of David and Goliath, right? So David was there because he was there in service. His dad sent him to go feed his older brothers who were fighting the war. He was there just to feed them. He was there in service. But when the opportunity presented itself, he was the only one that stepped up to fight Goliath, and he wound up being one of the greatest leaders of that time. But he was there in service. And so it's okay to enter the room in service. It is okay. You don't have to enter the room with this title or that title, or, you know, or these duties. But when you're there, step up, do the best job that you can, and someone will notice, and you can wind up being the greatest leader that organization has had, and get to the title of king that you wanted.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Sabrina, thank you for your time this afternoon. And I loved your story and all of the you know, the advice that you're able to provide for our listeners. I know for me it was incredibly informative, you know, educational. And so thank you. And
You're
thank you
welcome.
for the work that you're doing and the work that you continue to do. This concludes another episode of the Way to College podcast. Thank you to my guests. Thank you to our listeners out there. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and rate the podcast. And we will see you again next time. Thank you and goodbye.